Sexual harassment, stolen breast milk, and senior management failing to protect their employees. Overwatch's future was looking grim before Overwatch 2 had even launched. But Overwatch 2 had everything it needed to be a successful game. It had a dedicated player base, a strong competitive scene, a reasonably balanced multiplayer experience, fun seasonal events, actually good legendary skins, and honestly one of the best loot box systems in gaming. So how on earth do you add a 2 and completely mess up the entire game? Well, that's what we're going to take a deep dive into today. From the disastrous launch to the even worse Steam launch, we're going to carefully look at what could have driven the Overwatch team to make decisions regarding the unlocking of heroes, the way the battle pass was structured, and of course, a look at the PvE that never was. Overwatch 2 has failed on so many fronts that it not only failed to attract new players to the scene, but it drove away so many players that loved to play and grind Overwatch when it was rewarding. But before we go over all of that and look at what went wrong with Overwatch 2, we need to understand how Overwatch 1 ended and take a look at the main changes that Overwatch 2 brought to the Overwatch formula. Before we start looking at the game's launch, we need to take a look at what happened internally. Blizzard was the target of a gender discrimination lawsuit. Developers' breast milk was stolen, characters were named after real people who turned out to be sexual predators, and an open-ended strike which raised over $100,000 in 12 hours. It really couldn't get any worse. The legal issues surrounding Blizzard before and after Overwatch 2's release saw developer morale drop considerably and development for the game essentially grind to a halt. Let's start with the discrimination lawsuit. In July of 2021, just as Overwatch 2 was gearing to launch, Blizzard was hit by a lawsuit claiming they were home to a frat boy culture, claiming women were subject to harassment and gender-based discrimination, and shortly after this was made public, began mass employee walkouts. Developers demanding a safe workplace. These allegations were not just made against lower-level employees, but went right through to the CEO, Bobby Kotick. The Wall Street Journal reporting that he had known about the sexual harassment for years and had his own personal history of harassment. Blizzard tried hard to have these allegations squashed and thrown out of court. However, growing support from the industry and even players made this near impossible. Even if it was thrown out of court, Blizzard wouldn't be able to just sweep it under the rug. During this time, Jen O'Neill, the co-lead of Blizzard, who was only in the role for 3 months, stepped down, as well as the senior vice president of HR. Shortly after this, Blizzard shareholders demanded that Kotick step down as CEO, as did over 1,000 Blizzard employees in a petition. And they weren't afraid to list their full names and departments. Jim Ryan, Sony CEO, and Xbox boss Phil Spencer expressed their concerns that Blizzard weren't properly addressing the situation and were deeply troubled by the company's behavior. Everyone was against Blizzard, and the Overwatch launch was just 3 months away. But how does something like this affect a game launch? Well, working as a team is everything. If the developers aren't happy with their workplace, their standard of work isn't going to be as best as it can be. To add on to this unhappiness, the World of Warcraft developers and the Diablo developers were given performance bonuses. The Overwatch team? Well, they missed out. How can Blizzard think to release a game in 3 months that players will have a positive reception to, while internally they were falling apart? Especially since they already announced they'll be releasing it without the highly anticipated PvE section of the game. Blizzard was on thin ice, with its developers, players, and even major industry players. Things only got worse for Blizzard's gender-based discrimination cases. The timing couldn't have been worse for the Overwatch team. Jesse McCree, the game designer whose namesake for Cowboy McCree in-game, was terminated shortly after the outcry for the toxic culture Blizzard had cultivated. The character of McCree wasn't changed in any way, they simply renamed the character. I still call the character McCree, and it's 2024, not because I support that toxic culture that Blizzard had cultivated, but because that's what I called him for 5 years prior. Had they have made him an entirely new character, it might have been a different story. The industry thought surely this is the last of the horrendous treatment to come out from the developers over at Blizzard. We would have loved to believe that. In December of 2021, more information came out. At this point, you would think it's amazing that the Overwatch team was even able to release Overwatch in an environment where a huge chunk of the people working on the game didn't feel safe to go to work. They had to go in each day, put themselves in a position they didn't feel safe in or comfortable in, and create a game for millions of players to play and critique. In December, it came out that one victim of sexual harassment was demoted after reporting it to her employer. The employee, named only as Christine to protect her privacy, held a press conference where she revealed what had happened. She tried to report the behavior she witnessed and was demoted. So with all of these internal problems happening at Blizzard, leadership changes, employee walkouts, employees working in an environment they felt unsafe in, how do you think the launch of Overwatch 2 went? If you guessed spectacularly bad, you'd be correct. Now that we've covered what went wrong internally at Blizzard during Overwatch's development, you have some backstory and context to the decisions that were made and why the player base was already quite hostile towards Blizzard when launch day finally came around. From here on out, we're going to focus on Overwatch 2 announcements and player reactions, rather than any internal issues at Blizzard. When Overwatch 2 launched, you were able to purchase the Watchpoint pack, which included some skins, an exclusive player icon, the Season 1 Battle Pass, and 2,000 premium Overwatch credits that could be used to purchase skins so players could pick up that if they wanted to. However, this was included by default for all players who owned the Legendary Edition of Overwatch 1, which is quite nice of Blizzard, all things considered. When players finally got their hands on Overwatch 2, they were greeted with something that surprised a good chunk of players: the requirement to enter your phone number to play. Blizzard claimed that this was their new way to combat cheating and alt accounts. All players would be required to enter their phone number in order to log in and play the game. Which I understand how this could be effective, and I understand why players were upset. But an unintended consequence of this is it prevented players who weren't on a contracted phone plan from playing. So younger players who most of the time are on a prepaid phone plan, or any other person on a prepaid phone plan, would be unable to play until this was fixed. This was eventually removed entirely for players who had an Overwatch account pre-June 2021, but new players will still need to get an SMS protected account. As the day went on, launch issues got worse, and at some point you have to feel sorry for the Blizzard devs, as some of these issues weren't even their fault. Shortly after launch, players were unable to join or play games thanks to mass server instability, which was made even worse after 2 enormous denial of service or DDoS attacks hit the servers, basically bringing the game servers to their knees and stopping almost all players from being able to join the game. Those who did manage to get into a game were greeted with near unplayable matches due to lag and disconnects. Once the servers bounced back from their rocky launch, players were able to finally join the game and able to start playing. And there didn't seem to be any more issues, until the community discovered that the newest hero, Kiriko, would be unlocked via Battle Pass. Players with the Premium Battle Pass would have unlocked her instantly, while free players would have to grind to level 55. Once the season ended, players will have to complete challenges, or they could outright buy the hero according to Blizzard. But this didn't sit right with a lot of players. For the last 6 years, gamers were used to receiving heroes for free as soon as they launched. I'll be talking more about the monetization because of the transition to the free-to-play model in the next part. Now, it's not unheard of for games after a rocky launch to bounce back and become much better after a few of the bigger updates. Cyberpunk 2077 did it, Elder Scrolls Online did it too, but could Overwatch 2 do it? Especially since a game at launch missing PvE is really still Overwatch 1.5 with a few changes. We're now 2 years after launch and the Blizzard devs have bounced back considerably. Still, it's not close to the peaks that Overwatch 1 was at, and new gamers would love to know that all heroes are free to all players as soon as the new hero launches. No more waiting. Now, when Overwatch 2 launched with a free-to-play model, most gamers expected there to be a change in the way the game was played. Loot boxes were removed, a battle pass was added, an item shop similar to Fortnite was also added. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but most gamers wanted loot boxes back. Loot boxes in Overwatch 1 gave players a reason to play the game and level up. In Overwatch 2, it feels like you're gaining levels for the sake of gaining levels. The battle pass is nice if you own the pass, but for free players it seemed like grinding for a few rewards that aren't really worth it, especially once you pass level 55 and unlock the new hero for the season. The community wasn't happy with the new monetization system. Content creators called out the illegal sales that the Overwatch store was holding. Brand new items were being listed for as on sale for cheaper if you bought the bundle instead of each item separately. However, a lot of these bundles, you couldn't actually buy each item separately. Many countries have laws around sale prices that an item must have been sold at the original price before you can list it as on sale, which is why in some places these sales are illegal. In Overwatch 1, these Overwatch credits were used to buy skins, and you could obtain them for free through loot boxes. However, in Overwatch 2, you can purchase them with real money, or you can complete challenges. However, these challenges provided so little currency, it would take close to half a year just to buy yourself a legendary skin. And that's assuming you completed every challenge every week. Then entered the Battle Pass. Now, most gamers are happy with the Battle Pass. You're able to earn yourself some skins, some items, and some premium currency, even if you're on the free track. However, when the Season 1 Battle Pass launched, there were no Overwatch credits to be seen in the free or the paid track. The price was 1,000 credits, which is about $10 US, and you wouldn't be earning any of those back like in similar games such as Fortnite, where you earn the currency back to buy the next seasonal Battle Pass, assuming you don't spend your credits anywhere else. Players were not happy, to say the least, especially since the only way to unlock Kiriko during Season 1 was to buy the Battle Pass or grind to level 55, during a less than ideal launch to the game. Now, we've talked about the overall monetization of Overwatch 2, then it comes to the monetization of PvE. Overwatch 2's PvE campaign was promised to be a fully fleshed out campaign with skills, story missions, and more. Players assumed this would be paid, of course. However, when it was cancelled in favour of small PvE missions, players assumed they would receive these for free as part of seasonal content. However, Blizzard had other plans. Players would be required to pay $10 per mission or a $40 access pass, which creator Muzelk, who was incredibly active in creating Overwatch 1 content, weighed in. On his tweet, he stated $15 access for the Overwatch 2 campaign, a $40 premium access pass that you can buy instead, trying to justify the prices by including virtual currency and virtual skins with X value. If we had any doubt that Play Overwatch's campaign change was just a money grift, it's gone. Opinions like these were very common in the Overwatch community at this time. Overwatch 2 went from being a project that players trusted and were excited for to nothing more than a cash grab for basically re-releasing the same game again with a few tweaks. This isn't FIFA, guys. A big part of Overwatch 2 launching was the PvE. Everyone would be familiar with the absolutely iconic PvE trailer. Giant robot, returning characters, a gripping storyline. Why wouldn't an avid Overwatch 1 player be excited for this? Then came the developer announcement trailer giving players a look into what PvE would contain. The Overwatch team poured their absolute heart and soul into these missions, and you could tell. They teased full character skill trees, a full campaign. They also revealed they'll add to the campaign seasonally, so they didn't hold on to missions and content, and gave it to players as soon as it was ready. They even went so far as to tease what one of the missions would contain. revealing that we'd be able to return to Torbjorn's factory and fight Null Sector. However, in May of 2023, this was shattered. Blizzard broke the news that the fully fledged PvE mode with hero talents and progression had been cancelled. On Twitter, fans aired their frustrations. You could tell this was something the community was really looking forward to. The bright side of this announcement was that PvE wasn't entirely scrapped. There would still be seasonal co-op missions to be released in later seasons, similar to the event missions that players had been used to in the past. And finally, in Season 6 of Overwatch 2, we were finally given 3 stripped-back PvE missions. These stripped-back PvE missions came at a price, and players were not happy. $15 to access the mission, or you could purchase the Premium Pass, which also gave currency and skins. While players were happy to pay when they thought they were receiving fully fledged co-op PvE missions, a small game mode containing 3 missions with varying difficulties was not something players were willing to pay for. Again, airing their frustrations out on Twitter. Aaron Keller, the game director, said because of the new way they were releasing these PvE missions, players could look forward to the missions, quote, more often and with more variety than we had originally announced. However, in March of 2024, Overwatch PvE was completely cancelled. The reason given by the studio was because the original pack failed to reach sales numbers and claims that the PvE department of Overwatch had suffered mass redundancies at the beginning of 2024. PvE story missions only received 3 missions in all of 2023, and then just after a year later, they were completely dead in the water. Many players were outraged, especially because so many players saw PvE as the only reason for Overwatch 2's existence. The community felt betrayed. Twitter was exploding. Overwatch PvE is dead became a common title on YouTube within the community. And the game stood true to the memes. It truly became Overwatch 1.5. Now, recently, Overwatch has taken on a good amount of feedback, specifically around hero unlocks, and starting Season 10, all characters, when they launch, will be unlocked by default. This is a welcome change that all players have been rejoicing over. It's worth noting that new players will still need to play and unlock the initial heroes, but other players will instantly unlock the new heroes. Another change that players have rejoiced over is the new Mythic Shop, allowing you to progress through premium battle passes, and you'll be able to select past or current mythic skins to work towards. You can slowly unlock all skins and color variations, or if you just want to unlock the first one, you can then move to another older skin. Starting Season 10, mythic skins that are 2 seasons after their launch will be available in the shop. So, starting Season 10, skins from Season 1 through 7 will be unlockable. They're also allowing players to earn up to 600 coins from the free battle pass each season. They've also said that making changes to the weekly challenges so that they're more flexible to fit with your playstyle, but they will now award battle pass XP instead of coins. On top of this, major gameplay changes in Season 10, they're making changes to their defense matrix system, which is the system they have in place to make the game more enjoyable for players, protecting them from other toxic gamers. Firstly, they're adding the ability to play more competitive with friends, regardless of the range in ranks. This new wide group system will even let Grandmasters play with their bronze friends. The trade-off is the new queuing system. Obviously, you're going to get longer queue times, and they're using a system to ensure games are fair as possible, keeping wide groups with skilled distributions as close as possible. There is also a modifier to change the amount of rank points you earn, so some players may see a very small increase, and some players may not see any at all. This is just to ensure that those lower ranked players don't get carried or boosted by their higher ranked friends. They're also making strides in protecting all players from toxic gamers. Leaving penalties have been boosted, And the avoid as teammate system allows people to put toxic players on a list so the matchmaking system will attempt to avoid them and keep them off your team. And for streamers, there is finally a hide name feature that will hide your battle tag from other players, which really surprises me that it took this long to be implemented. Before we wrap up this video, I'm going to talk about Marvel Rivals very briefly. This new game looks like it could challenge Overwatch. It's got that massive and much beloved IP of Marvel and characters that players are already familiar with. It's another hero shooter, but we'll have to see how it goes and if it can challenge Overwatch. But if Marvel has a good enough launch and Overwatch continues to make bad decisions, Blizzard could be in a bit of trouble. So since Overwatch 1, Blizzard have had a ton of issues with Overwatch 2. Not all of them are the developers' fault, such as layoffs. Those were because of upper management. But Overwatch's progression since 2016 really makes no sense. For the Season 10 announcement, Overwatch was arguably in its worst state since the initial launch back in 2016. It will be interesting to see if Blizzard can save the hero shooter from falling further into the pit of issues they've put themselves in. But only time will tell, especially with the launch of Season 10 only 2 days away as I'm writing this video, and as I'm voiceovering this right now, it's only a few hours away. By the time this video is posted, Season 10 will have launched, so let me know in the comments, has Season 10 saved Overwatch for you?